This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Shipyard workers ended their defiant strike against the communist government of Poland today. After 9 days, they gave up, at least for now, trying to win their main demand. But still, they said they were not beaten. CBS News correspondent Bert Quint was there when it ended.
Lech Wałęsa led a weary band of strikers from the Gdansk shipyard at dusk today, abandoning for the moment their battle to win legal recognition for their outlawed Solidarity Union. But they had won something. They had forced the regime to deal with this union it insists doesn't exist. Wałęsa, who had commanded 10 million people in Solidarity's heyday, had shared the risks with a handful of workers, most of whom were children when Solidarity was born here 8 years ago. It was this new generation of Poles who continued fighting for the old dream of a free labor movement after most of the older strikers left the shipyard last week in the face of police threats. The regime tried to settle the strike by offering a pay raise, the reinstatement of shipyard workers fired for political reasons, and freedom for a few political prisoners. But the government refused to consider making Solidarity legal. And even as it was negotiating, police kept a cordon around the shipyard to try to starve the strikers out. That cordon became even tighter today, and police beat 2 young smugglers running the blockade with vital supplies. With no hope of winning and facing increasing hunger, the diehards gave up. The final message from here is, this is just one round. There are bound to be more. The end of the strike came as a surprise, but those who were on the street came rushing to greet the strikers as heroes. And once again, after years in eclipse, the biggest hero of all was Wałęsa. Wałęsa said Solidarity wasn't ready for the strikes that broke out spontaneously after the government decreed drastic price increases. Now, the way Solidarity sees it, this isn't the time for regrets. It's time to get ready for the next round. Bert Quint, CBS News, Gdansk.
Mikhail Gorbachev admits that his program of perestroika, attempts to restructure the Soviet economy, has set off turmoil and even panic at all levels of Soviet society. In a speech to Soviet newspaper editors released today in Moscow, Gorbachev said some people think perestroika is a destructive force, but this is only because they are confused. He called on the media to get behind the reforms, and he said he will soon push for a major overhaul of the whole Communist Party to promote his program. In this country, Oliver North today refused to obey a Senate Foreign Relations Committee order to turn over his diaries. The committee believes these diaries may shed light on accusations that some of North's operatives secretly involved in running arms to Nicaraguan rebels were also running drugs. Against that backdrop, new confusion this evening about whether President Reagan has or hasn't, will or won't, rule out or rule in presidential pardons for North, Poindexter and Company. CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plant is tracking the latest.
Will Ronald Reagan pardon Oliver North and John Poindexter? It's a question which provokes strong feelings, and one which the president was careful not to answer until yesterday, when he seemed to close the door on pardons. But today, Mr. Reagan reversed himself, opening the door wide once again.
Mr. President, have you definitely ruled out pardons for Poindexter and North? No.
Just yesterday, asked about pardons by columnist Carl Rowan, the president said, "You can't consider that until this case has been closed. This is something that I don't have to face."
He made it clear that he's not considering pardoning them.
But hold on. The pardon issue has become a political touchstone for conservatives.
My name is Jerry Falwell, and I am asking you to join a national petition drive to pardon Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North.
And that's why the president's political operatives want to keep people guessing about what he might do. And that comes as no surprise to a former White House political director.
If he doesn't at least keep the hope alive, there's an awful lot of conservatives who I think would get very disgusted with this administration and feel that they've walked away from 2 people who they feel are patriots.
Staff members say the president still believes that he shouldn't interfere in the legal process, but they insist he has an open mind on the question of pardons. Those same aides get all annoyed at any suggestion that the president sees the pardons as a political issue. But they don't deny that that's how they see it. Bill Plant, CBS News, the White House.
A follow-up report tonight from CBS News National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl. Friday, she reported on a complex and confusing, still developing case that involves accusations now being investigated by Congress. Accusations that high-level Justice Department officials may have engaged in improper conduct. The charges include possible lying under oath in a case involving a multi-million-dollar contract between the Justice Department and a computer software company. Tonight from Los Angeles, correspondent Stahl looks into accusations of a high-level cover-up in the case. Leslie?
Dan, the Justice Department is investigating whether some of its own officials lied under oath in the case of Inslaw, a computer company that claims the Justice Department tried to drive it out of business. A federal judge ruled last fall that the Justice Department stole Inslaw's product, then tried to hide it in a cover-up that the company charges included pressure from Attorney General Meese to get Inslaw's lawyer fired. The lawyer, Lee Ratiner, was aggressively pursuing Inslaw's lawsuit against the Justice Department. He approached another lawyer at his firm, E. Bob Wallach, a close friend of Meese, to see if an out-of-court settlement could be reached. Wallach promised to contact someone at the Justice Department.
E. Bob Wallach made statements to me that would have suggested that it was somebody so high up as possibly to be Meese, and his report was that there was no way that this case was going to settle at the Justice Department. The atmosphere had been poisoned.
After Ratiner filed court papers accusing top department officials of wrongdoing, Meese admits he discussed Inslaw with a powerful partner at Ratiner's firm, Leonard Garment. The judge in the case remembers what followed.
Mr. Garment had a conversation with Ed Meese, and according to the Justice Department answer to interrogatory, this was a conversation about the Inslaw case. Within 10 days thereafter, the attorney who was handling the Inslaw case was fired.
Garment, who once represented Meese, says the charges are total baloney. He denied under oath that he was ever asked by anyone to force Lee Ratiner out of his law firm. He testified that he didn't remember even discussing Inslaw with Meese. But Inslaw's owner, Bill Hamilton, charged in court that after firing Ratiner, Garment's law firm, Dickstein Shapiro, tried to sabotage his case.
The firm sent a letter to me by hand and said that by the end of that business day, they wanted me to give them written authority to settle the case.
The letter came before Dickstein Shapiro's attorneys got access to crucial Justice Department documents.
Dickstein was delivering this ultimatum and saying, your case is no good. How could they know the case was no good before they had conducted the discovery?
The Dickstein Shapiro law firm told CBS News, quote, the judge doesn't know what he's talking about. The firm denies pressure from the Justice Department. But Hamilton and his advisor, Elliot Richardson, claim the firm's actions nearly destroyed their case.
They put him in a real squeeze. The offer they made, given the evidence already developed, was such an insignificant offer that it amounted in substance to saying, we want to wash our hands of this case.
Hamilton got a new law firm and went to trial where the judge was convinced a string of Justice Department officials were lying.
I was struck by the fact that, in my view, almost all of them were committing perjury.
Cornelius Blackshear, now a federal judge, swore in a deposition that his old boss at the Justice Department pressured him to force Inslaw into liquidation. The next day, Justice Department officials visited Blackshear, who then changed his story. Judge Basin believed the first story, but called the change an honest mistake. Blackshear's boss, Thomas Stanton, during the trial, he denied he tried to force Inslaw out of business. But the judge found these notes from a Justice Department meeting more persuasive. He says they show Stanton intended to liquidate Inslaw. Stanton's deputy, Anthony Pasciuto, says he was initially forced to lie at the trial.
There was a concerted effort to try to subvert my testimony so that, number one, either I would lie, or number two, if I didn't lie, they already made up their minds they're going to fire me. The cover-up on the Inslaw case would have to have started from the very top, the Attorney General's office, and worked its way down.
Judge Basin stunned the Justice Department by ordering the government to pay Inslaw $8 million. Officials claim the judge was biased and intemperate, and they appealed. At the same time, the IRS demanded Bill Hamilton personally pay back taxes owed by Inslaw.
It didn't make any sense to suddenly come after us personally unless you wanted to intimidate us and make us fearful of pursuing further our investigation and prosecution of these claims.
What happened to the other people involved in the Inslaw case? Judge George Basin was not reappointed as a federal bankruptcy judge. He was replaced by a lawyer who represented the Justice Department in the Inslaw case. Whistleblower Anthony Pasciutto was eventually fired after 21 years as a government employee. And Bill Hamilton expects Inslaw to emerge from bankruptcy by the end of the month thanks to a promise of financing from IBM. He no longer does any work for the Department of Justice. After years of official inaction on the case, there are now 3 separate investigations. A Justice Department probe into Meese's role in the case has reportedly already exonerated the Attorney General. But another internal investigation continues into perjury and other charges against high-level officials, and a Senate committee is looking into charges of illegal conduct by the Justice Department. And a footnote. Last week, we reported that Senate investigators are probing alleged links between the Inslaw case and a California friend of Attorney General Meese, Dr. Earl Bryan. Though Dr. Bryan refused repeated requests for an interview with CBS, he told us through a spokeswoman that he had never even heard of Inslaw until news reports of Judge Basin's bankruptcy decision. Bryan adds he hasn't spoken with Meese in nearly 5 years and says, quote, "To the best of my recollection, I have never even met Mr. Lowell Jensen, who is characterized in your report as one of my friends," unquote. Dan?
Thank you, Leslie. And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, correspondent Mark Phillips on the Pope's concern for the coca, as in cocaine, farmers of Bolivia, and John Blackstone on what makes some people so jumpy about astrology.
It takes time to get your gal to see the light. It takes time. It isn't always love inside. From the first little glance till she's ready for romance. Remember, little man, it takes time. It takes time to make the coffee percolate. It takes time to get your gal to set the date. From the first moonlit walk till you get the baby talk.
Introducing the Elegance Collection from Citizen.
Yeah.
Presenting the winning performance, the winning look, the winning ways of Buick's great American coupe, the new Buick Regal. Introducing the totally new Regal Grand Sport with a powerful fuel-injected V6 engine, world-class aerodynamics, each wheel independently suspended to grip the curves, and the stopping power of a disc brake at each wheel. The Regal Grand Sport, the newest member of a very Regal family.
The great American road belongs to Buick. See the colors of Puerto Rico, colors, colors everywhere. Puerto Rico, the shining star.
Now for indigestion, gas. Introducing new Extra Strength Malox Plus. It neutralizes more than any leading antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as new Extra Strength Malox Plus.
French President Mitterrand today named his new prime minister, Michel Rocard, a socialist who describes himself as a, quote, free enterprise leftist, will take over from conservative Jacques Chirac, who resigned following his election defeat by Mitterrand Sunday. Rocard said he will focus on problems of France's young people and the unemployed. Pope John Paul took on the issues of poverty and drugs today as he began a 5-day visit to Bolivia. CBS News correspondent Mark Phillips reports.
2.5 miles high in the Andes, Pope John Paul II celebrated Mass today and began dealing with the immense social and economic problems being faced by Bolivia. Widespread unemployment, a massive foreign debt, and cocaine. John Paul will head deep into Bolivia's cocaine country this evening at a time when the Bolivian government is considering a law to make coca growing illegal. And while the Pope is expected to speak out against drug use, what he has to say about how it should be fought may not please many at the Drug Enforcement Administration in Washington. According to the church in Bolivia, these coca farmers are not the problem. They're just trying to make a living in the poorest country in South America. It's a view shared by local politicians.
We don't push anyone to
consume cocaine. It's still perfectly legal to grow the coca plant here. Its leaves have been sold on the open market and chewed since Inca times. It's said to produce mild euphoria and to fight off hunger pangs and cold. The farmers see only a modest income from growing the plant. In fact, prices have been falling. But it's still more than they'd earn from growing other crops and a lot more than the government is offering them to destroy their coca plantations in an effort to curtail the cocaine trade. If we lose this, they say, what are we going to do? The money begins to roll in as the leaves are illegally processed into cocaine paste and the drug begins its hugely profitable journey to the streets of the United States. Profits that show up here in the palaces the Bolivian drug lords build for themselves, not in the simple huts of the Bolivian farmer. It's among the traffickers and consumers in the United States that John Paul says the battle against drugs must be fought. The demand in America has created the problem, he says, not the poor people producing the coca leaf here.
The United States has to make a real effort to stop the demand in his country.
Angry Bolivian coca farmers have been gathering in crowds, demanding the government not succumb to American pressure and bring in its anti-coca law. Perhaps as a gesture of support for the farmers, perhaps because it counteracts altitude sickness, John Paul sipped 2 cups of tea made from the coca leaf on his flight here. Mark Phillips, CBS News, La Paz.
This museum is where they began their summer vacation. Everything was planned. Everything was perfect. Everything except this.
Hey! Hey, somebody grab that guy!
It could happen to you right here in the U.S. So don't carry cash. Carry American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
I tell you, he's gotten goofy.
I like your dad.
Dad? He thinks he's my brother. Last night we were shooting hoops at 10 o'clock.
So?
Marty, this is the same man who never lifted his nose out of a newspaper. Now he listens to Z-Rock on the radio. Who is this?
The right vitamin nutrition and a balanced diet helps people get more out of life. Some are finding Kellogg's Product 19, 100% of 12 vitamins and minerals.
I just wish he'd act his age, like your dad.
Feel like 19 again.
More than 1 million people already own a Hoover Concept 1. They're enjoying its deep cleaning quadriflex action, brushed edge cleaning, and its self-propelled effortless handling. So what are you waiting for? Concept 1. Hoover keeps making it better.
If you're concerned about heart disease and your doctor advises exercise, the right foods, and an aspirin a day, you should know that heart specialists recommend Ecotrin more than Bayer when they're concerned about aspirin irritation because it's safety coded. Ecotrin, the one heart specialists recommend.
The House voted 413-4 today to ban making or selling any high-tech plastic guns. The guns now must contain enough metal to be picked up by X-ray machines and metal detectors. New U.S.-Soviet turbulence before the Moscow summit. U.S. Senate debate on ratifying the missile deal reached at the previous summit in Washington is now off indefinitely. President Reagan wants the treaty ratified before heading to Moscow. Secretary of State Schultz is off to Geneva tonight for some troubleshooting with Soviet officials about this, and the Senate has helped the president give Schultz some leverage. Defense Department correspondent David Martin reports on what the trouble is.
A Soviet SS-20 missile launcher. But is there a missile inside? Under the terms of the treaty banning intermediate-range nuclear missiles, an American inspector could open this canister and see for himself. But an 11th-hour disagreement between the U.S. and Soviet Union over exactly what items can be inspected has suddenly threatened to derail or at least delay Senate ratification of the treaty.
I cannot fathom why the Soviets have come up with these particular impediments.
This treaty has already been negotiated, been signed, and the question is to make sure the Soviets and we agree on the on-site provisions.
This is a prototype of an inspection station the U.S. would set up outside the Soviet SS-20 plant. It would measure and weigh all trucks leaving the plant to make sure none of them is big enough or heavy enough to be carrying an SS-20. But the U.S. also insists the treaty gives it the right to inspect smaller items to make sure the missiles are not being smuggled out of the plant in stages. The Soviets are balking, and if the issue is not resolved quickly, the Senate might not ratify the treaty in time for the Reagan-Gorbachev summit later this month in Moscow.
It would greatly enhance the atmosphere of the summit if we can clear this up and have the treaty ratified prior to the summit.
Secretary of State Shultz meets with Soviet Foreign Minister Shevardnadze tomorrow in Geneva in an effort to settle the dispute. Shevardnadze arrived in Geneva today and was quoted as saying he thinks the verification problems have already been resolved.
Soviets, after all, in our judgment, want to have a treaty. We want to have a treaty. It seems to me there are things to be clarified as opposed to a great deal of argumentation that's insoluble.
Senate leaders say they still have time to ratify the treaty, but this latest flap is just one more sign of how difficult it will be for the two sides to reach agreement on the much more complex treaty limiting long-range nuclear weapons. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Federal aviation officials today blamed the flight crew for last August's crash of a Northwest jetliner during takeoff at Detroit. 156 people were killed in the nation's second deadliest commercial aviation accident. The National Transportation Safety Board said, quote, the probable cause of the accident was the flight crew's failure to use the taxi checklist to ensure that flaps and slats were extended for takeoff. The report also said an interruption in the plane's power line to an alarm system contributed to the crash. The Airline Pilots Union immediately criticized the finding and promised its own investigation. Los Angeles authorities today said a security guard turned off smoke alarms in violation of fire regulations and then sent a maintenance worker to investigate the cause of last week's fatal skyscraper fire. The maintenance worker died, trapped in the elevator, and 40 other people were injured in the blaze. A spokesman said it is not uncommon for security to check possible false alarms in high-rise buildings, but in this case the action delayed the fire department's response by 7 minutes. 4 major Wall Street firms today announced they've indefinitely suspended a highly profitable computerized method of trading stocks. The reason, something called index arbitrage program trading, is widely blamed for causing wild swings in stock prices and destroying investor confidence.
Mom sure know how to make life easier. Mine was always there for me. Like another mom I know. This mom, Phillips Milk of Magnesia, M-O-M. The laxative that helps your body work naturally for easy overnight relief. Would Mom be harsh? No. And Mom's even easier to take with this dosage cup. See? Mom knows just what you need. So when you run into trouble, remember, nobody treats you better than Mom.
You hear the thunder, the call of the road.
Whether it's the roar of an available turbo or 16-valve engine, Grand Am is sheer driving excitement.
Get on your Pontiac and ride,
And now, with $400 back direct from Pontiac, you can really cash in on Grand Am excitement.
Get on your Pontiac, rebuild excitement.
Captain, this itchy rash is driving me crazy.
Why didn't you use the Cord-Aid?
Cord-Aid goes beneath the skin to actually heal itches and rashes.
You know, itches and rashes won't last if you use Cord-Aid first.
New Caffrey toothpaste decaffeinates your smile.
Coffee and tea can stain your smile, like they stain your cup.
New Caffrey gets out coffee and tea stains better than the leading toothpaste. Caffrey decaffeinates your smile every day, toothpaste or gel.
More tonight on the Ark Royal. That's the yacht that made some waves. Customs officials in Florida today backed down and returned the yacht to its owner. Hot tubs, disco, and all, after the owner paid $1,600 to cover the government's cost of seizing it. The Coast Guard towed it and threatened to sell it when a drug search turned up 1/10 of an ounce of marijuana and a few seeds. Customs officials today agreed they didn't have a good case, but insisted they are sticking by their overall policy. We've tried to keep you posted from time to time on Nostradamus fever. The alleged predictions of the old 16th century prophet raged through Southern California tonight, reinforced by revelations about President and Mrs. Reagan's interest in astrology. And for those worried about a devastating earthquake, correspondent John Blackstone reports that means the fault may lie in the stars.
Strange things have begun to happen now that astrology is out in the open. And these aren't the only people doing something strange. But more about that in a moment. At the White House...
Tell us the astrology jokes. Did the president joke about it?
Well, it was something that wouldn't allow me as a Virgo to speak on it.
As a campaign issue, the stars are replacing Star Wars.
but you should not be running a serious government with Dr. Omar in charge.
The president has to represent all the people, not just the sane people, not just the rational people, not just the intelligent people, but the loons, the maniacs, the kooks. They have a right to some say in the policy, too.
Until now, the British thought they were eccentric. Prime Minister Thatcher faced Parliament today.
Has she given consideration to appointing a resident astrologer at number 10 Downing Street?
No, Mr. Speaker. I come under Libra, which is a very balanced sign.
With all this going on, what's a skeptic to do?
I think if one was confronted with Nancy Reagan and astrology, I would say to Nancy Reagan, just say no.
But people are not saying no. In fact, the First Family has given astrology a new credibility. The result, believe it or not, heightened earthquake fears for thousands of Californians. Because it was an astrologer named Nostradamus who predicted 400 years ago that California would be destroyed this week by an earthquake.
When you have people crying and people that can't sleep and people that have actually, in order to get through the next week, had to leave town.
Those who can't leave have been stocking up on survival supplies.
What do you think personally about the prediction?
I think it's a bunch of hooey. You know, it's romantic, it's mystical.
Mystical, maybe. But these people are trying to give astrology some practical help by starting the earthquake themselves.
There's certainly a bit of lunacy going around, but I don't think the moon is causing any of it.
But for those who want to believe in the power of astrology, the California town of San Juan Bautista was shaken by a quake today, but only 3 on the Richter scale.
It didn't seem very big. The little rock kind of puts you back to sleep.
This week's revelations about astrology have caused more disturbance than this quake. John Blackstone, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
A few words on the performing arts. The new Ford Probe, a performance you won't forget.
Heartburn again.
Yeah.
You're going to sit there and suffer. You're going to take something.
What do you have?
Riopan Plus 2. It's double strength.
I hope it works fast.
How fast can you get to the medicine cabinet?
In lab tests, Riopan Plus 2 starts neutralizing acid in 10 seconds, and 1 teaspoon neutralizes more acid than 2 teaspoons of regular Maalox or Mylanta. That's twice as strong.
You look better.
You want to go out for a banana split?
You're kidding.
Riopan Plus 2, the fast antacid.
My wife, every night she disappears into the bathroom. Who knows what's going on? But whatever it is, it makes her feel really good. See?
Clean away stains and freshen dentures with Efferdent every night.
The prince was having a boring birthday until I popped up with my new Canon SureShot multi-telly. It got me close. I want that camera, said the prince, and the chase was on. Everybody wants the multi-talented Canon SureShot multi-telly.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, Donald Regan on Nancy and astrology and his controversial book.
Also at home with Lynn Redgrave on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
Coming up on Eyewitness News, crews move into Batavia Alley in an effort to move out drugs, but will it work?
And Metro firefighters win a battle for equal pay, but will it fly? Plus, we'll tell you about a cleanup junkyard cave.
Join us for these stories and more next on Eyewitness News.
He's our son, and we don't know him anymore.
Where does he go all the time? Do you know who his friends are? We don't talk.
Frank?